Daniel is 34, and he noticed it on a Tuesday. The group chat, the one that used to be unbearable, hundreds of messages a day, plans and arguments, and inside jokes piling up faster than he could read them. He opened it on a Tuesday night and realized the last message was from 11 days ago, and it was his, a link nobody responded to. He scrolled up, months of this, the thread that was once the center of his social life now flickering to life a couple of times a month. That's the strange part. There was no fight, no falling out, no single moment where it broke. The people he would have once called his best friends in the world are still out there. They just drifted. And if you're somewhere past your mid-20s, you have almost certainly felt some version of what Daniel felt. The slow, quiet contraction of a social world that used to feel enormous. Here is what most people never learn. This is not a personal failure. It is not that you got boring or they got distant or everyone just got busy. What's happening to you is one of the most precisely documented patterns in all of social science. It happens to nearly everyone, and it follows a curve so predictable that researchers can practically draw it before it happens to you. It starts around age 25, and it almost never stops.
Yeah.
In 2016, researchers at Oxford and Aalto University got their hands on something extraordinary. The mobile phone records of 3.2 million people across an entire country. Who called whom, how often, for how long, a near-complete map of human social contact at a scale never before possible. And when they plotted social connection against age, a clear shape emerged. Through the late teens and early 20s, the number of people someone was in regular contact with climbed and climbed. People in this window were, in the researchers' framing, socially restless, constantly making new contacts, expanding outward. The peak arrived at about age 25. And then the line turned and began to fall. Not briefly, not as a temporary dip. It started falling, and for most people, it kept falling for the rest of their lives, only flattening out somewhere in their 50s. After 25, the data showed people lose contacts faster than they make them. There was a detail in the data that stings more the longer you look at it. The decline was steeper for men. Men peak with larger social networks in their youth and then shed them faster, so that by their late 30s, they're often more socially isolated than women the same age. The loud, crowded male friend group of your 20s is, statistically, one of the most fragile social structures there is. But a number on a graph doesn't explain why. To understand that, you have to understand that your brain was never built to hold an unlimited number of people in the first place. There's a concept you may have heard of called Dunbar's number. The idea, from anthropologist Robin Dunbar, is that the human brain has a rough upper limit on the number of meaningful relationships it can sustain at once. That number is around 150, but the part people miss is that the 150 isn't a flat list. It's a set of nested layers. At the very center is a layer of roughly 5. These are your intimates, the people you'd call in a genuine crisis. Around them sits a layer of about 15 close friends. Beyond that, a layer of around 50 good friends. And then the outer ring of 150, the people you know well enough to not feel awkward sharing a meal with. Each layer is larger and each layer is emotionally cooler than the one inside it. Here is the rule that governs the whole system. These layers are maintained by one resource that becomes scarce as you age: time. The inner 5 demand frequent, sustained attention. Let that contact drop, and people don't just stay put at a comfortable distance. They fall outward, from close friend to good friend, from good friend to acquaintance, from acquaintance to a name you recognize but no longer really know. The relationships decay along a predictable gradient the moment the time stops flowing into them. And the cruel timing of life is that right around the age your social circle peaks, the time required to maintain it starts disappearing. Which brings us to the most uncomfortable number in this entire story. A researcher named Jeffrey Hall set out to measure something nobody had really quantified before. How much raw time does it actually take to turn a stranger into a friend? It takes roughly 50 hours of time together to move someone from acquaintance to casual friend, about 90 hours to become real friends, and more than 200 hours before someone crosses into the category of close friend. To build one genuinely close friendship from scratch, you need to spend the equivalent of 5 full work weeks in another person's company. Now, lay that against the life you actually had at each age. At 20, those hours were nearly free. You lived beside your friends. You shared a routine that threw you together constantly. You had enormous stretches of unscheduled time, and you spent it on each other almost without trying. Hall found that students were spending something like a third of their waking hours with one new friend in a single month. And you didn't plan it, it just happened. Then look at what happens next. You get a job, and that job takes the single biggest chunk of your waking life right off the top. Then, for many people, a partner who moves to the very center of the network and absorbs the time that used to be spread across a dozen friends. Then often children, then a mortgage in a different neighborhood, a schedule that has to be coordinated 3 weeks in advance to share a single meal. The 200 hours didn't change. Your supply of them collapsed. The friendships of your 20s weren't better than the ones you can make now. They were just built in the one period of life when the raw material was abundant. And nobody told you to spend it while you had it, because at the time it felt infinite. This is why making close friends as an adult feels so strangely difficult. You're trying to build 200-hour relationships out of a calendar that can barely spare 2. So instead, the maintenance quietly stops, and the layers do what the architecture says they do. They fall outward. So, where does that leave you? The first uncomfortable truth is that some of this contraction was not done to you. It was done by you without your awareness. The research on this calls it active pruning. As time becomes scarce, people unconsciously begin concentrating their limited hours on a smaller number of relationships that matter most and letting the rest go. You weren't a victim of the drift. You were, quietly, one of its authors. Every friend who faded from your life was also, from their side of it, watching you fade from theirs. And there's a version of this that is genuinely healthy. Trading 50 shallow connections for 5 deep ones is not a tragedy. It's a reasonable response to a finite life. The mechanism doesn't know when to stop. It just keeps optimizing for the emergency in front of you, which is never the friendship. There's no clean fix to hand you, because the cause isn't a mistake you made. It's the structure of an adult life colliding with the architecture of a social brain. The 200 hours are still 200 hours. The time is still scarce. Knowing the mechanism doesn't create more days in the week, but it does reframe the silence. The quiet group chat is not evidence that those friendships failed, or that you did. It's the visible trace of a curve that nearly every human being is riding, usually without ever knowing it has a name. The people in that thread didn't stop mattering. The hours just ran out, the way they were always going to. Daniel typed a message that Tuesday night. Not let's all get together soon. An actual date, an actual place, 2 weeks out. It's the only thing that has ever worked against the curve. Not feeling more, but deliberately spending the one resource the whole system runs on in a life designed to spend it on everything else first. Most people never send that message. They just watch the thread go quiet and assume it was about them.